Hi, everyone. So welcome to the Department of Pediatrics, and I'm very happy that you are interested in this area. So I will be presenting on behalf of the allergy team of CU Pediatrics. So I will just briefly introduce the team members of our CU Allergy. So it consisted of Professor T.F. Leung, who is also sitting here at the back here. And I will briefly then introduce their research interests. And we have also got Professor Gary Wong. They are both very, very experienced in the field of allergy research for 10 plus years. I will undermine the years. And then it will be myself and Dr. Christine Y. So we work on different areas of allergy. So for Professor T.F. Leung, his main interest in the natural history of childhood allergic diseases, and he currently have multiple projects on different birth cohorts studying mothers who are actually pregnant and then they gave birth to their child, and then we follow up the children over time to see whether they develop allergic diseases. Professor T.F. Leung also studied immunogenetics of asthma and eczema, and he, together with us, studied the different diagnostic and treatment of food allergies. And he also recently studied the host microbiome interaction as a determinant of childhood allergies. And as for Professor Gary Wong, so both of them work a bit more on the airway allergies. So Professor Gary Wong worked with epidemiological studies, so one of which is asthma and allergic diseases. He was one of the key members in leading the previous ISAC studies in Hong Kong in collaboration with the rest of the world, and it led to a lot of interesting and impactful studies. And at the moment, he also worked a lot on environmental determinants and gene-environment interaction of asthma. And as for myself, so it's mainly food allergy and anaphylaxis. I, together with Professor Christine Y, work with the different novel diagnosis and treatment for food allergy, in particular oral immunotherapy, which is like state-of-the-art therapy for children with previously incurable diseases. And I also study the multiple primary prevention strategies, preventing them from actually having the allergic diseases in the first place, as well as recently the multi-omic profiling approach in different food allergic conditions. And Christine is a basic scientist. She works with non-invasive diagnosis of food allergy, and I'll talk a little bit more about her research later. So mainly is basophil activation test and with the different component resolved diagnostics. Recently, she has a groundbreaking project which work with immunotherapeutic vaccines against stream allergies. And she works also with bioinformatic analysis on different food allergic conditions and immunotherapy as well. And she also leads all the animal experimentations of our team. So I will briefly introduce one of the key studies of our team. It won't be very long. So this is one of the studies on asthma. So we are one of the rare populations in the world where we have populations of the same genetic background, but living in a very different environments. So which is urban conditions, such as in Hong Kong, versus the rural parts of China, such as Zhonghua. So this is one of the studies that look into the prevalence of allergic diseases between the rural and the urban areas. And we, of course, unexpectedly found a very high prevalence of allergic diseases in the urban area. And so we went deeper into researching the various determinants which may have impacted on the variation in the allergic diseases prevalence. And so we found some of the potential protective factors, which include the poultry exposure and agricultural farming. And after that, we also took some biological specimens from these rural and urban samples. And one of the studies that we did is with animals. So these dust, we use it in the animal model. And when we stimulated in the mouse model setting, we did indeed find that the rural farm dust, it was able to reduce the pro-inflammatory mediators in the mouse. But versus, we also found that it increased the anti-inflammatory signal. So in fact, it could be a very important findings, because we indeed find that the environment is important in mediating the risk of allergic diseases. So a lot more work is being done, continuing at the moment. So you're very interested to come and learn more about these very interesting study about environmental determinant. And along the same line, Professor T.F. Leung is also doing a lot of studies about the microbiome and like host microbe interaction. So this is just one of the studies that look into the airway microbiome in mediating the asthma risk of asthma exacerbation. You can find that during exacerbation, there is a reduction in the diversity of the airway microbiome. And we do a transition analysis, we find an expansion in one of the microbes, the Morosella, and we found that it may potentially be the cause that, an association that leads to increase in asthmatic attack. So this is very interesting study, but although we do not find a very significant difference in the composition, it's mainly the diversity that is different between the exacerbation and baseline. And you can see this very beautiful cladogram here showing the phylogenetic variation in patients with wheezing illnesses. So microbiome is an emerging field. We found that it may actually mediate the risk of a person suffering from allergic diseases with its onset, with the severity of the diseases and the control of such diseases. And myself and also with other team members also increasingly focus on food allergy research is because we found that around the world there is a global rising trend of the prevalence of food allergy, in particular food-induced anaphylaxis. You can see this is a study done locally, finding an increase in the prevalence of food-induced anaphylaxis, particularly in the blue bar here representing pediatric population. And this is one of the collaborative studies where we have more than 20 centers around Asia looking in the anaphylaxis pattern. And we found that shellfish is very important in Asia in contrast to the Western world. And the rising food allergen here is also tree nuts. So we have a lot of collaborative work with other countries as well. And this is another area that we work on in the prevention of food allergy, because if we can't stop it from happening in the first place, then we may potentially prevent this from happening. So a lot has been going on in the prevention field. So I did talk about some of the important research here is the immunotherapy. So we are one of the first center in Hong Kong who actually do these oral immunotherapy research. This includes peanut oral immunotherapy, fish, wheat, tree nut, and stream. So we did obtain a few grants that look into the different immunotherapeutic approach in treating this patient in food allergy. And I would say 10 years ago, these allergic diseases are incurable, so you have to live with it lifelong. But now we have a treatment for them, and it's not very painstaking because it just requires a daily intake of food, just like with what you are doing right now. So this is it's the approach that matters, the regime that matters. And this is one of the examples of how we gradually step up the food dosage for our patients. And there are a lot of science behind these powder as well. And we are currently recruiting patients into different areas of this research. And I welcome you to observe these various procedures as well. They're happening every day here. And this is an area where Professor Christine White also actively works on. So it resulted in a number of impactful publications, and one such is the discovery of number of components in stream. So we have registered it in the WHO nomenclature. So we identify a number of components in tiger prawn, and we found that it could be very important in helping us to diagnose patients with stream allergy. And what tropomyosin was previously known as the major allergen may not be important in all the areas of the world. In fact, there may be geographical variation. People in Thailand indeed show a slightly different pattern compared to the populations in Hong Kong. And also a lot of research has been done into novel diagnostic approaches as with the basophil activation test and other like cellular assays such as the exile approach as well. So we are one of the first groups here who do bats in streams. And also exile here, not a lot of groups around the world also adopted this approach. So it's a very good way of actually evaluating a patient with food allergy, much more precise with a higher diagnostic accuracy. So I won't be very long-winding, and that would be the end. This is the group here. So it consisted of course, the clinicians here, including Noel and Alice, and we have different PhD students. We have a lot of research nurses and research statisticians who help with our research, together with a lot of important postdoctoral support and also research assistance as well. So I welcome any questions at the end, and Professor Leung and Christine Y is also here